Nature study is such a big part of a Charlotte Mason approach, and a lot of times we can get bogged down looking at our nature notebooks and focusing on those rather than looking toward what they are meant to cultivate in our children and in ourselves. That love of nature, that familiarity with nature, more than just a nodding and naming acquaintance, as Charlotte put it. So let's talk about how we can not get so focused on the means to the end, but we can focus on cultivating that end result, that love of nature in our children. Welcome to the Simply Charlotte Mason podcast. I'm Sonya Schaefer. Joining me today is my daughter, Ruth Smith. Ruth, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
This is a topic, nature study, that I wanted to discuss with you because I think you cultivated a love of nature in spite of my efforts when you were young. It was a perfect case of I was trying to give you something that I did not have myself. Mm-hmm. And so I would hand you the nature notebook. Don't anybody do this, okay, by the way. But I would hand you guys your nature notebooks, and I would say, go outside and find something to draw. Right. Remember? And do you remember the mailbox picture?
Yes.
I'm not going to say which child drew it, but someone did. So, but I was so stuck in the form of we do the nature notebook and somehow
Check
a love for nature will magically appear.
Right.
Rather than focusing on nature itself. And somehow in the midst of all that, you developed a love for nature.
Yes.
in spite of that. And I've seen you pass that on to your own children. They are still young, but I've seen it come alive there, that you are nurturing that in them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how did you do that?
Sure. I think it starts very young, as babies even. And what I think is key is just getting outside as much as possible. And that doesn't mean 6 hours a day. It doesn't even mean an hour every day. But just even small amounts add up. So maybe we don't have time to get outside for an hour this afternoon, but we could go to get the mail from the mailbox, which we haven't drawn, by the way, and just take our time.
Yes, rather than we're going to go get the mail, get back in, let's
come back inside. Right, we're outside for a little while. Maybe it's too hot, maybe it's too cold, but we can stretch this trip to the mailbox for a little while and just see what we notice. There's so much that we take for granted, I think, that is totally new for young ones.
Yes.
If you think about the inside of your house, it's probably going to look and feel about the same all the time. But you step outside, and there's this multi-sensory shift. It sounds different. It looks different from day to day, from different times of the day, the quality of light, the way the air feels. Is it overcast? Is it sunny? All of this is new to the child, and they're taking it all in. I remember all of mine when they hit the first sort of season change, but maybe they're babies. They're used to it always being hot outside, and then one day we go outside and it's cold, and you can see the shock on their face. Sometimes the displeasure on their face, like, what is going on? It's never been cold out here before. All of that is new for them.
And those little ones especially their senses are so heightened. Mm-hmm. They use their senses, all of their senses, to explore everything. And as adults, we start to almost minimize certain senses or focus only on certain things. So getting out there and I think Charlotte said, the flower is not new, but the children are new.
Right.
That can help revitalize our own senses and our own desire to observe, our powers of observation as well.
I've gotten a lot of joy out of observing my children, observing nature. I think that's part of the incentive to keep doing it, because there's so much pleasure in seeing them make these connections and sort of introducing them to everything about nature that you love.
And not all of the connections are positive all the time, though, because
It's true.
we recently had a snowfall here in Georgia.
Yes.
And you sent me a picture of the two younger ones out in the snow. Would you like to describe what happened?
Crying. Yes, yes. We've had that happen before because the snow is always a shock and it looks so pretty and then it's very cold and very wet all of a sudden. We didn't have proper boots and so once the snow gets up over your ankles, that's the end. It's not fun anymore.
They used their senses, but they learned
Right.
something that was not
Yeah.
as attractive as they
Right.
thought it was. You said something about when you sent me that picture. It was like the appearance of snow is not as inviting as the reality of snow.
Right, the
or something
idea
like-
of snow or
Yes.
watching it is better than the actual snow. Yes, but we all learned from that, and when we, surprise, got more snow
Yeah.
a week or two later, we tried going out again, and they were prepared this time. We were a little more careful about where they stepped, and they ended up enjoying it a lot. So it's true. Not every experience is going to be positive, but they're still learning and
Yeah.
taking it all in. So I think one key is to just keep getting them outside. Even if you don't have a big yard, and we've been blessed to have a large area to explore, but even if it's a small yard, I can't tell you how many things we've observed in just one little patch of grass and a bush on the way to the mailbox or, right outside the driveway where we play. Year after year, I'm still, we've been in one place for several years now, but I'm still seeing things and observing things that I've never seen before. So that's fascinating to me. I think one key to help keep the love of that relationship with nature alive and not just check it off is to think about maybe your own interest in nature. As you said, I do have a love for a lot of aspects of nature, and so that came naturally to me because I wanted my kids to, I would just share with them what I was seeing the same way we talk about when we're cooking. Oh, here's some broccoli. Oh, look, here's a dandelion. Look what happens when you blow the seeds.
I remember, if I can throw this in, when you were younger, and down here we have those little anoles, little
Yes.
lizards, and you would catch them somehow. They are so stinking fast, but somehow you would catch them. And they are brown when they're cold or anxious, but when they're feeling warm and confident, they turn bright green. And you would hold it in your hand, you would breathe on it, and
To
it would
warm it
turn
up.
to make it green again. Yeah, and so was it just a few weeks ago? Your husband Jordan was telling me about an anole that was you found in the house, and he just in passing said, "And Ruth caught it, and then we put it outside or whatever it was." It was like, yeah, it's just natural. Of course, she's going to catch the anole.
Yeah, it was. I was excited to show the girls.
Did they get to breathe on it and turn it green?
We didn't. No, we didn't.
It might have been overwhelmed by all of them around it,
Yeah. Well, so I think it could be helpful to think about if there's any aspect related to nature that you're interested in, because maybe you're not an animal person or a bug person or a plant person, but maybe you like hiking or camping or fishing. I don't know, anything that would get you outside in nature. Gardening, of course, whether it's a vegetable garden or a flower garden. Just think about what area is interesting to you and continue to cultivate that. Even though you have children that you're responsible for, you can bring them into that, and then you're joyful about it. And you're naturally going to be bringing them into the joy of that.
It's like a little entryway to get them into the world of nature.
Right.
And they could take that and run with it any direction they want to.
Right.
But it is your attitude that is so important
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
So I found a bird feeder, of course, is really helpful. A bush that attracts butterflies is wonderful, because if you've got something colorful moving around, that's going to catch their interest. But if you're scared of butterflies or you don't care about birds, you don't have to force it. Find something else that you do like about nature, and bring your kids along for that. And then hopefully, as you continue to grow in this, they may develop an interest that is different from your own. Like I've got one who has become very interested in aquatic life, so sea creatures and everything. That's not really my thing, but because she loves it, we have learned more about it. I've gotten a bunch of books for her, and then as she learns about it, she shares that back with me. And so we have that back and forth of the joy of nature and God's creation and learning from each other.
And that reminds me of what Rochelle and I were talking about recently. I love the phrase that she uses. She says, as a teacher in a Charlotte Mason school, you are not the sage on the stage. You are the guide by the side. And so as you're both going along together, you're both discovering things and sharing it with each other. So what you just described there is that mutual learning, that mutual discovery and joy.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. One other huge benefit I found through cultivating this time in nature and just observing nature with very young ones is that in observing nature, like no other area has given me opportunities to talk about God. Of course, His creation is obvious. That's an easy thing to talk about, how God created all these things. They can see it. But it also has brought opportunities to talk about things like death, because at some point you're going to find dead insects or dead animals, and that may be their first encounter with death, and this is your chance to talk with them about that. I had one very sensitive child just devastated about the loss of a flower, which was blooming for a while, and then it was the end. And so I was able to talk with her about how, there are some things a lot of things that don't last, but there are some things that are eternal, and to give her some of those truths to hold on to. So I think that area of nature gives you so many more opportunities that you would miss otherwise.
It makes total sense. I often tell people that when you're in a house or a room of some kind, you're surrounded by everything that people have made.
Right.
But when you're in nature, you're surrounded by everything God has made, and it's a totally different atmosphere. So of course, you're going to find opportunities to have those deep spiritual conversations when you're surrounded by the things He has made. That's fabulous. Any encouragement you want to give to someone who's like, I don't think I like nature at all. I don't even have a pet, Well,
obviously, I turned out okay. That's true.
Yes, even though I had none. Yeah, that's true.
Right. Yeah, I would say just give them as much opportunity as you can stand. And let them, they will form a relationship.
I think that's the key, to focus on the relationship. The end goal is the relationship with nature, and not the nature notebook as this is the only way to get to that.
Right. It could be a helpful tool along the way.
Yeah, but it's also a reflection of the relationship you've already formed.
Exactly.
So if you don't have the relationship, you're going to have a hard time with the form itself. So it goes both ways, really. But I appreciate all the help and encouragement for developing that love of nature in our children and focusing on their hearts more than the specific technique, check off, I did the assignment.
Right.
That's important. And no mailboxes in your nature notebooks.
Yeah.
Thanks. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.